Hello and welcome to another comedian's interview for my blog and podcast, A Rich Comic Life. My name is Richard Gill and my blog describes my experiences of watching well over 1,000 comedians for nearly 50 years. I'm delighted to welcome my guest today. It's Mr. Will Davies. Yes! Hello, mate.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, Richard.
My pleasure. Are you all right?
Yes. I mean, as I was saying before we started, I am horribly sweaty and unshaven because I forgot about the existence of cameras, despite having this in my diary for a couple of months. I have the appearance of a very organized person, but in reality, I'm simply just not.
Well, I'm delighted to have you as a guest, and thank you very much for doing this.
That's all right. Thank you for having us.
And as I say, we're going to talk about 45 minutes to an hour or so, all about your comedy career.
Yes.
And I'd like to kick off and ask you, how did you become a comedian in the first place, please?
The short answer is flattery.
Nice.
I had originally when I was much younger, because when I was a kid, like Mock the Week was a big thing, and I had watched that, and I kind of had the aspiration to kind of be a comedian, but I didn't have the confidence to back it up. I think in hindsight, what I was really aspiring to be when I was like 15 was, confident. But I didn't really do anything that was even like remotely like performing until I went to university, and I started playing like role-playing games like Dungeons and Dragons, and that for a long time was my creative outlet.
Right.
Where literally I was doing, and when I was playing or running in one of these games, they would be funny, but essentially you'd be to an audience of the same four guys every week for 10 years. Not necessarily very different from comedy now, but while I was doing that, I found out there was in London, where which wasn't too far from where I lived, there was a comedy show called Questing Time, run by a gentleman called Paul Foxcroft, which was like a Dungeons and Dragons comedy show.
Right.
I started going to that religiously. At the end of one show, Paul said that he taught improv classes, which I thought sounded like a good thing to do. A class, that'll be an activity, that'll fill some time. And I went down there and I had a lot of fun. And in this level 1 improv class, there were a couple of actual comedians. And after class one day, two of them cornered me and were like, "You should do stand up." And I was like, "I don't think that's a good idea." And they were like, "No, your brain in class works so much like a stand up that I think you'd be really good at it." And I just went, "Oh, really? That sounds fantastic."
That's brilliant.
Yeah. So so this was back in 2018, and I booked my first gig, like everyone does at the Cavendish Arms. Yeah. And then, much to my dismay, found out that I really enjoyed it.
Why much to your dismay? Because of the confidence?
Well, I mean, for a long time, I was not good at it. Right. So that was hard going. And now I often find myself saying, "Oh, I don't want to go out tonight. I don't want to go to a gig. I don't want to do all of this stuff.
Can't be bothered.
Can't be bothered." Just at least once a week I go to myself, I'm gonna quit.
Wow.
And then the other side of my brain just goes, "You haven't got anything else on. What would you do with your time?"
Yeah, exactly.
So I'm a bit stuck now.
Well, I said to you before we started the recording, the 10 minutes I saw you at Sofa So Funny, was inspired.
Thank you.
There is a unique and original way that you deliver gags that had us belly laughing. And that's all I can say. So please, please, please keep doing what you do. Because it's wonderful.
Unless something either fantastic or terrible happens, I don't see myself actually being able to stop.
Good man.
But I mean, what form that takes remains to be seen. Because
yeah. I mean, a lot of the comedians who've been on here, and I can imagine, it's all about experience and experimentation, because you're trying to find your niche, you're trying to find your way throughout the quagmire of loads and loads of people trying to do exactly what you do, which is to entertain an audience and make people laugh. And you can effortlessly do it.
I don't know that I would describe it as effortlessly.
I like your positiveness.
I mean, there was a lot of effort in the 4 years leading up to that.
Sure.
10 minutes. And to kind of like keep at it. Like I said, there is that impulse, that resistance, to it, because it's a huge investment of time.
Oh, of course it is. Yeah.
It's like when I a couple of years ago when I was still doing bringer gigs, I kind of did the math on it. Or the maths rather, if we're going to keep up this pretense of being English. I did the math on it, and if you're doing a 5-minute spot as a bringer, you're often essentially doing at least 8 hours worth of work. You're committing 8 hours of time.
Yeah.
Just to that 5-minute spot. So like if you're doing like I was for almost the entirety of that time, swaps for the comedians.
Yeah.
You've got to commit 4 hours to travel to and attend the gig that you're seeing, and often, sometimes it's more. Some of them, back before the pandemic, certainly often ran 3+ hours. And then if you're doing a sort of a comedian, you've got to go do the same thing again for them. So it's an enormous investment of time to do that. And then now I'm doing fewer gigs. I'm doing slightly better gigs, or what I'm going to do. Bring us an open mics and things. Normally they're places where people are kind enough to let me just come and throw stuff at the wall.
Yeah.
But it's still the investment of time to go there and do those things, which obviously is a lot less if you're not having to swap with someone. But also now that you're taking it seriously, the amount of time that I have to spend preparing takes up the rest of that 8-hour block.
Yeah.
It's because that's one of the hard lessons that I've learned, is that I have to prepare, even if I think to myself, this is the 10 minutes that I've been doing for the past 6 months. I know it back to front. Then every time I say it to myself, fortunately now that there's another voice in my head that goes, but remember those other times that you said that and that didn't happen.
It's the old adage, fail to prepare to fail, isn't it?
Exactly, yeah.
So you were in your improv group, and they told you were very, very good. You were superb at stand-up comedy. Did that must have obviously given you the will to have a go and do it in pubs. So I'm guessing the way you got in was through 5-minute slots in pubs. So you would take a friend along, because I'm normally the friend.
Yeah.
The fact that this blog exists, it's not just for big famous comedians, it's for brand new up and coming comedy talent, and and I do the gamut of supporting everybody. So I've been in the audience as the friend
Mm.
uh, that they require you to bring along to support you in the night. And I've been to 10 or so gigs for the same comedian just to get them going. And if it's funny, of course, with my infectious laugh, I'll laugh
Mm.
and everybody else will do. Um, but was there a point where you thought, yes, I can do this and I can do this okay?
I It's definitely been since um, the lockdowns
Yeah.
ended. I definitely feel more confident in myself. I think a lot of that has come down to um, a workshop that I did. Um, I'm so bad at remembering time. I think it was last year. I think it was March of last year that we were doing it.
Okay.
And it was something that was organized through 21 Soho. Um, I applied for this workshop and I didn't get it. And then fortunately, um, someone dropped out. And I was at a gig, I think at Always Be Comedy at the Tommy Field.
Wow.
I was watching a work in progress. I think it was Celia AB and Steen Raskopoulos.
Yeah.
Um, and then the the gentleman who was one of the tutors on this course, Adam Brace, who sadly is no longer with us, just sort of loomed over me as I was sat in the back row of this here. Just went, I have just sent you an email, and I was like, "Why? What have I done?" Um, and I always be very grateful to have been put on that course because it really helped me um, understand what I was doing and
Yeah.
what I should be doing. Um, but the moment where I think it really came together for me was at the we did a showcase at the end of that workshop. If you did 21 Soho, and it was probably, I think, uh, the first time in a long time that I played a proper show, or at least something that felt like a proper show.
Yeah.
And that went, for me, certainly, that went so well that I think I still, I mean, in a sense, riding that high a bit. It's moved up the bedrock of my confidence, I think.
That's wonderful. That can only be a good thing.
Yeah, I would say so. Yeah, I mean, it's a that whole class is something that I still think about. I think I would say almost every day.
Yeah. That's that's
Um,
that's great. When you're on stage, what do you like to talk about? Do you have any specific themes or anything like that?
um, Not really.
No.
Not at the moment. I mean, um, I mean, what I kind of gravitate towards, I think, is what everyone gravitates towards, which is anything that I kind of have a strong opinion or a strong perspective on.
Yeah.
Um, at the moment, that the material that I've got that's kind of uh, uh, the best is about my life over the last couple of years, because I've had uh, some romantic upset. I've had an autism diagnosis. I've had an attention deficit diagnosis. I've had some trouble at work. Um, you know, those have all sort of been very sort of big
Of course.
events in
Yeah.
my life that I have a lot of things to say. I'm trying now to move into more topical stuff because I think that's what I aspired to be when I was, first watching stand up as like a teenager.
Sure.
And one, I don't want to get arch, but like I think I'd much rather have something to say, um, and to do something that's as interesting as it is funny. And then also from a logistical perspective, I don't really do much. I don't. I My life experience is not so rich that I think I can build like multiple hours on just things that have happened to me, because there aren't many. Um, and certainly now, if I start doing things that are happening to me, they'll all be like stories about gigs that I've done,
Sure. Yeah. Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
and
I
not
had
having adventures.
Yeah, I had a go at stand-up comedy once and once only. I knew a promoter from the Edinburgh Fringe. I've told this story many times, and I just passed my driving test in Carlisle.
Oh yeah.
I said to him, I said, I want to be a stand-up comedian. I think I'm funny. I can remember a load of jokes. And he goes, "All right." He said, "Well, go and write a script." So I wrote a script about me crashing cars in Carlisle, and he loved it. And he said, "Right," he said, "we've got a gong show, the worst thing you could do.
Mm.
Gong show on a Monday afternoon, and it was specifically for old folk." And I ran out. I was the first. We couldn't be worse. I ran out, and there was three people in the crowd. And the first thing I said to them was, "Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. People think I look like the ski jumper Eddie the Eagle Edwards, but I can't see the resemblance myself." And when I did it, I still do, but I was the double of him. And one old bloke at the back just went, "Fuck off!" And I thought, what? And that was it. I went and I walked off, and I said to the promoter, I said, "I think my success lies in the audience, not on the stage."
Mm.
But never say never again. It can be the most daunting thing, but I can imagine when you get laughs, it must be the most wondrous thing because you're achieving what you set out to do.
It's that. Whoops! I just dropped something. There's certainly a great deal of satisfaction in it.
Yeah,
Um, there's also, especially when it's new material, there's also a huge amount of relief,
yeah.
because it is often a gamble. Like I've done gigs where I've walked through the room and just gone, I sense that every person in this room, even though they've not seen me, hates me. I went to a gig in Croydon recently. It's like, this is every person that I've had an argument with on a bus. This is not going to go well. And I got my first couple of jokes out, and they were on board, and it was fine. I could just feel like a weight lifted. Um, one of the first gigs I did out of lockdown that I think really helped with that uh, panic response. I did one of the first gigs. It was a gong show at Top Secret, and it was the first gong show I'd ever done. And fortunately, I wasn't on first, so I had time to just sit there and just go, "Oh, okay, this isn't a comedy show, right? I'm not gonna do stand-up comedy here. I'm gonna have a little walk. That's about it." Um, and it was a brutal night. It was like at 1 a.m. They were all students. They were all
Wow.
pissed. The MC was brutal. He'd overbooked us, and so he's like, "You have to vote people off, otherwise we're not going to get through." Like, and
Wow.
some really great people like got gonged off. Like Tadia got gonged off.
Yeah.
Um, I got on, and I lasted about 38 seconds,
Wow.
and
Good for you.
I I was quite surprised, but I think that the reason was they didn't realize I was there, because they were all still arguing about the last guy. So there's this one lady in the audience to whom I was doing my jokes, and they all turned around and they're just like, "This guy's done." And afterwards, I was outside and I was talking to some of the other comedians, and Raj Pujura was there, and I said, "I think that went better than I was expecting. I'm surprised that I did 38 seconds." He was like, "Oh yeah, mate. I was stood at the back, and the moment you stood up, they all wanted to kill you." And I was like, "Oh, cool. Well, I'm glad the
Thanks
front
for
of the
being so honest.
audience were distracted." But one of the things that I was taught in the improv class as well, by Paul and Co. Was one of the things that Paul used to say was you have to have a couple of bad shows so that you learn that they don't matter.
I was just going to say that. My next question was going to be: do you think that? Do you agree that I always think it's all about experience. I think the great comedians have to go through bad shows to become better comedians. I think you have to unfortunately experience the bad shows to become a better comic. Would you agree with that?
I would agree with that. I don't know when it was. I think it was last Camden Fringe.
Yeah.
Went to see Pierre Novelli do a work in progress.
Oh, he's brilliant. Yeah.
Oh, he's so good. Definitely one of my top five.
Yeah.
And we were in, and we kind of like every time I go to the Camden Head, my friends make me sit in the front row. And so we were sat in the front row. I was looking around. I was like, "Oh, there are two stag doos in here. Oh, this is going to be an absolute bloodbath." And fortunately, one group of them was fine, but one group of them were a stag do. And like just watching Mr. Novelli like just absolutely just take these guys apart.
Yeah.
Was astonishing. But like he did it with like the like a very well practiced hand. I think I remember him saying, "You can't." Something to the effect, "If you can't ruin this for me, I'm good at this." So it's like, I think that's case in point. Really, I think you kind of you have to go through that so you know how to deal with that, because that's always going to be there.
When I first started going to comedy, certainly in London, I would at the front row. I was terrified, absolutely terrified of it, and I would sit halfway back or further back because I thought my loud laugh would carry, and they would hear me, which was true, right? But when I first went to Always Be Comedy, first act I saw was Josh Widdicombe, and I was halfway. And then I went again, and I was on the front row, and I was asked to go on the front row, and the confidence that I wasn't aware of shot right up, and then now I love sitting on the front row because I'm happy for them to make me part of the routine. They're not necessarily taking the piss, but you can have a laugh with them, you can know them, and it's how you go about conquering that confidence. Because I used to be not very confident at all. I've never ever interviewed anybody before, and now I'm doing this, which is extraordinary, for
Yeah.
point of view. So I think confidence plays a massive role in life generally, and certainly doing something like stand-up comedy should, not necessarily always, but it should help or conquer it.
I was thinking about this today because I figured it would probably come up. But like I think definitely doing stand up has changed my self image. It's improved my self confidence.
Yes, yeah.
But I don't think that it's the cure to all ills.
Well, no, maybe not.
No,
It certainly helps.
it certainly helps. Yeah, I mean, I go about now kind of forewarned and forearmed, I suppose. But
A good answer.
it yeah it I mean, being on stage with an audience is a very sort of kind of specific dynamic, and I do sometimes have to work quite hard to stop that from spilling into my personal life. Like you can't in a work meeting do heckle put downs.
No.
Because you will get fired.
Yeah.
Actually, though, that there was one time I was supposed to give a presentation like to like a big all department meeting, and I had my notes on the tablet. As I went up to the stage after like keeping this thing open for like 2 hours. It locked, and I wouldn't have been able to reopen it in time to give this talk. So what happened was I accidentally gave like an off the cuff 5 minutes set of like work based stand up, and my boss, or my manager's manager's manager,
Yes.
still like brings it up and it's like, the next one you're going to host. It's like, I don't want to do that.
Oh, they can't force you to do something like that.
No,
If you don't want to do it,
promised.
don't do it.
He promised to pay me, and I thought, well, technically that'll be a corporate, but like I can't, um, because I've always kind of refrained from inviting colleagues, and when they ask, I say, well, I don't want to lose my job, not because my material is like caustic or offensive
Sure.
or controversial, but it's a
It's
very
two different
different.
lives. You've got your
It's a
work
different
life.
persona. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Tell me about your writing process, for example, for that 10 minutes that I saw you at Sofa So Funny. So
Uh,
you have your 10 minutes, and how did you go about thinking what you were going to put in that routine?
the and that route, a lot of my material is very modular.
Yeah.
So what tends to happen is I tend to write very small bits and then kind of link them together. And that, if it's, I don't remember what material I did, but if I anticipate it's probably about my two diagnoses. That material sort of came up as this very small parts of the story, uh, kind of writing those because as I felt comfortable with what had happened, and then either when I was talking about it with people in life, if I said anything and someone laughed, I would write that down, or if I was either trying to get to a particular thing or wanted to talk on a particular subject or was trying to connect to these kind of like organic bits, kind of sit down and either I'll kind of write an essay almost, kind of to kind of get the thesis of what I'm trying to say, and then try and make that funny in as concise a way as possible. Or I'll kind of, because the thing that always strikes me as odd is that I found that I have like a weirdly conversational style. Like I really need feedback from the audience, even though I kind of see myself as a really insular person.
Yeah.
I'm kind of at a stage now where, particularly from this workshop, I have a really good feel for my voice on stage. So I kind of like, I have that, I kind of have basically I have a vibe in my pocket that I can pull out and say, okay, well, this is now how I feel at the moment and how I will feel on stage. And I can just kind of talk from that persona.
That's
And
really interesting.
it's yeah, that's one of the things that kind of like really helped crystallize at the workshop. So like before then, I had found that if I try and be cheerful and upbeat, it doesn't work.
Right.
And then at the workshop, we were kind of talking about that, and we did a couple of exercises where like we worked through why that's not working for me, and then we kind of like settled on like this. It needs to be from a very sort of downbeat place, because that's really what translates well. Um, and so like Adam and Alison, who ran the workshop, were like really sort of pushed me in that direction. That kind of really crystallized kind of like what I had been thinking, but I don't know that I would have made the connection kind of without that. And now I kind of have this this mantra almost, which is another improv practice when you're trying to do a character. you can have a line in your head that's like you repeat to yourself, and that kind of helps shape your thought process. And before I go on stage now, I kind of imagine one of two things. Like one of those is like kind of like sort of the scales of a black serpent just kind of like sliding by, as almost if it's like the intro sequence to like a particularly macabre like detective series. Or I say to myself, I'm a snake, I have important snake business, and I repeat that until I kind of feel like I'm in the right space.
That's incredible. But if that works for you, that's brilliant.
It's become very much something that's well practiced now, so I can kind of slip into it kind of more easily without necessarily having to do those things. But like there's kind of like my memory is very kind of like associative. Like I really need to have like a trigger to kind of recall information.
Right.
But then I feel like, kind of having this sort of a psychic collage of kind of the emotional state that I need to be in to function is really, really helpful.
Mm.
It's, I mean, because to be fair, also, it's not 100 miles away from who I am.
Yeah.
Because like if I posted on Twitter once, oh, I'm having a nice day, and I got a lot of messages going, oh, I think you've been hacked.
Really, are you having a nice day?
I thought because I've often thought that I'm quite an even keeled kind of guy, and then people are like, you're the most depressed man I've ever met, and I was like, I feel fine. I mean, not always, but I mean, a lot of the time, yes. Well, good guess, but
are you enjoying this interview? Do you find this difficult to do? Or
no,
no,
because this kind of falls into the kind of the comedy sphere. So I understand with the autism, I'm definitely much more at home in situations where I understand kind of what the agenda is, basically.
Sure. Yeah.
So this falls within that, and then this is also one of the things that I do love about comedy, which is kind of the comedic process.
Sure.
I really enjoy kind of these conversations about kind of how the machine works.
That's great. Well, I'm having a great time listening to you. Let's move on to the next question. How do you cope with any nerves before you go on stage?
It's definitely that kind of that mantra model helps.
Yeah.
Kind of like talking to myself a bit does help. Like if I can get into kind of like a because I often feel that I run on more than one kind of emotional track.
Sure.
Not all the time, but like if I can get into a place where I can kind of like make a case to myself, that's often very helpful. Like I did King Gong.
Yeah.
I don't remember when, in this year
Comedy
or late
Store.
last year.
Yeah.
And I remember kind of standing there, and like everyone was cacking themselves, and I was cacking myself. And at some point, I just went, "Oh, this is basically just another show." So you just have to go on. You just have to say what your bit. You've been doing this for ages. It's very good. You don't have to worry about it. You don't have to worry about remembering it. And worst comes to worst, you can go home sooner.
Yeah, there's always that.
And I got up. So I felt kind of confident about it. I got up on stage, and like there was one moment where I do a joke about divorce, and I don't necessarily paint divorce in the best light, or rather the divorced men. And there was one sort of slightly angry, slightly sad voice from the right at the hand who just went, "Card." And I was like, I had like a moment where it's like I could engage with that, or I'll just ignore it.
Yeah.
I just ignored it, and just carried on. And uh, I don't. I guess no one noticed. Because I finished my set, and I actually came second,
Good for
uh,
you.
which was great. Which is an enormous boost for my confidence. Where it's like I just went to the comedy store for the
Yeah,
first
that's
time ever and
incredible.
smashed it, and
Yeah.
then I went home and looked in the mirror and just went, oh no, it's still that guy.
Ah, but
the
on that night, you said exactly the same thing. You smashed it, and in that moment, it was amazing. That's why
mm,
I do my comedy blog. There's nothing better than going to a comedy night, sitting down, and saying, "Right, entertain me," because you're in the moment. That's
mm.
what it's all about. You never know what's going to happen. It's just the most magical thing. Would you say that as soon as you speak into a microphone or as soon as you got a laugh, the nerves would maybe subside?
Um, if I'm doing stuff that I know, then yes.
Yeah,
If I'm doing new material, then it's a real struggle.
right.
Like I had a show at 7 p.m. comedy at the Albany on Monday,
Yeah,
where I have two jokes that I kind of rely on as kind of like my introduction. Um, because one of those is like, hello, this is my persona. I'm very downbeat and kind of dour. And the second one is just like, um, I'm this is just a funny thing to say, and it kind of sets the tone for the rest of the evening. And then I have a little bit that I do kind of that just to kind of bookend new material, um, which I find is useful at kind of like one introducing myself because I feel one A then I guess kind of like a dour downbeat persona is kind of like a well established trope. It's something that people are familiar with, so people can go, okay, we can laugh at this, it's allowed. And then uh, the kind of like the book ending of these other two jokes
yeah, yeah.
kind of just I hope puts everyone at ease. So I hit those three marks, and then when I'm coming to get into my new material, there's like a certain amount of I think really like lost my train of thought. Um, because what if that happens too much when I do new stuff? Like I'm sure like anyone who's seen me on the regular will know like anyone who's been to Comedy Bandits, for example, in Clapham, will be more than aware of a long period of time where I just said to myself, I'll just go up and riff and it'll be fine. And it wasn't, because I would get off piste very quickly.
Yeah, yeah.
Because like I wouldn't I would be off the sequence of kind of what I was trying to do.
Of course,
Well, I
yeah.
wouldn't have the
Yeah.
confidence in it, and so I would bail out and just desperately searching for anything that's not even funny, just desperately trying to find something to say.
It's interesting because it's like what you said at the start about preparing. That and you need to prepare even if you know it backwards. You need to prepare because it leads on to my next question. Do you have a way of remembering your routines? Do you have notes on your hands? Do you write it down in a book or what?
My handwriting is so appalling that I if I write something and leave it 2 weeks, I won't know what it says.
Wow.
So I have a couple of exercises where like I will write kind of the headlines of the set down.
Yeah.
I'll read through it before. I'll kind of write out what I want to say. If there are changes that I want to do, I'll have a plan. I'll often, if I'm doing new material, I've been thinking about it, for a certain amount of time each day. One of the things that I like to do, mostly because it's entertaining, is I like to turn to someone at the gig, ideally another comedian or someone that I know, and then just say to them what I'm going to do and not explain. because like I'll just say like, oh,
That's great.
it usually something like, it's my birthday. My dad laughs. Uh, Ted Bundy is also here, and then just walk away.
That's
But
brilliant.
like the exercise of just having said it out loud really
Yeah,
kind of like
helps
reinforces it
you
for me.
enormously. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
because one of the problems, especially with like uh, open mic gigs and kind of new material nights, is if you're there for a long time before you get to say anything, it can just kind of drain away. Because like if I'm helping out at a night, I might be like the closing act, or I might be at the
yeah.
bottom of the third section or something. It could be like 2 hours away from when I turned up. Um, and in that time, everything else that's happened, I've got to process that, and then that can have displaced uh, all this thinking that I've done before. So I need to kind of like do as much as I can as possible to kind of like make sure it's in the forefront of my mind. So I have to do something experiential to make sure that it's in my memory as clearly as it can be.
Fascinating, fascinating. Let's move on to Edinburgh. I am very lucky to be able to go to the Edinburgh Fringe every year. It's my holiday.
Mm-hmm.
I've been going since 2005. This last particular year, 2023, I've been branching out to more festivals and fringes. I've been to Leicester, I've been to Brighton, I've been to Hastings, and it's wonderful. What's your view of fringes and festivals, and have you been to the Edinburgh Festival?
I haven't been to Edinburgh Festival. Um, I kind of always planned to go with my sisters even before I was doing comedy, but we've never actually got round to it.
Right.
I was going to go last year for a weekend, but the in 2022, but the train strike um, meant that I couldn't physically get there.
Sure.
Um, but yeah, I'm hopefully going for a week this year. I'm not taking a show. Um,
So you're a
the
punter.
Yeah, I'll hopefully do some spots, but I haven't got a show
Good
to
man.
take. But the uh, one of the conversations I've been having recently a lot with other comedians is obviously about audience. I say recently, this is always the conversation,
Uh,
um, and in London, certainly, there's not an there's certainly more comedy than there is an appetite for, and it's definitely my goal to get more into the festival circuit, I guess,
sure. Yeah, yeah.
where like people are more interested in seeing comedy. And like obviously there from my conversations I've had, there are obviously some festivals that are better for that, and there are obviously some festivals where it's still difficult.
Yeah.
Um, but like I think that's kind of where comedy is kind of at its purest.
I agree 100%. As I say, I've been very fortunate to be able to go to a lot of these festivals this year, um, and they are so well run, and they are for um, bigger fans of the genre,
Mm,
if you see what I mean. So therefore, it's all very creative when you're there. You can just go and do what you want. If you've got your show, you can go and do spots here and there. And certainly with Edinburgh, if you do go, I do hope you have a wonderful time like I do. There's some amazing experience when you step off the train at Waverley. It just hits you, the atmosphere,
mm.
and you just think this is extraordinary, and
I've
it's such
been
a creative thing. I'm going at the end of August. This recording's being recorded in June 23. I'm going the last week of August. I've never been the last week. I always go the middle week when
mm,
you think the comedians are at the best, because they've done the first week where they get it out, where they think they're going to be good, and they're good. And then the middle week is their best, and then they tend to peak off because they're shattered the third week.
Mm.
So they need somebody like me with all my enthusiasm there to keep them going.
I'm sure they'll appreciate it. I mean,
I would think so. But if you've never been, you will have the best time.
yeah, I've been very, very envious the past couple of years watching people go.
When are
Um,
you going? Are you going to go the middle week?
I'm not sure of the exact dates, but I think it is the week of the 20th.
Yeah, yeah.
Um,
Oh
I'll
well,
have to check.
I might see you there. I'm going the 23rd to the 28th. If I see you
Mm.
there, I'm going to buy you a drink.
Oh, thank you.
Good
I
man,
appreciate that. Yeah,
definitely. Um, to date, what do you think has been your comedy highlight?
yeah. I think the kind of the main milestone. Um, uh, and the three things that I really that kind of jump out at me. My first gig back from lockdown,
Yeah,
um, where like been having been through all of that, having not done comedy for like 2 years, came back, did a bring a spot at the now sadly defunct Joker comedy, um,
yeah.
which actually, to be fair, it is still going in other guises, but the pub that isn't is closed. Did that gig, first gig back, and then someone, I'm not sure that they're still doing comedy. Um, Someone said to me, "Oh, that's the best I've ever seen you." I was like, "Oh, okay, so maybe this isn't completely ruined." Um, and then maybe like a year or so after that, we had this 21 Soho
Yeah.
workshop, and I earlier first week of June I did my first half hour, and that was a big highlight. That was like uh, that felt like an achievement. Uh, that felt like really like, oh, okay, like I'm not really playing around
Sure. Yeah, yeah.
anymore. Um, Downside of that is I don't really know what I'm doing anymore. Because like I need to have kind of a plan. Um, because what the main thing that I took away from that half hour is like, okay, I need a plan, I need a structure, I need something
Yeah,
to
yeah,
work
yeah.
towards. Um, but yeah, I mean, those are kind of the three things at the moment. I kind of like uh, the kind of the big sort of stepping stones.
That's excellent. You mentioned lockdown. Did you do any online gigs in lockdown?
I did one improv jam, and that was so bad in
Oh,
terms of both the setup and the content that I was so put off for like 2 years.
wow.
Um, it was like, I mean, I think we've all seen bad improv, but imagine bad improv where the performers cannot really see or hear each other.
Wow.
So that was
That's
hard
tough.
going.
Yeah, that is
And
tough.
then at that stage as well, I was already sort of cognizant of the fact that I kind of needed a much more immediate face-to-face response from people to know that a gig is either going well or poorly. And I was like, I don't think I can just recite material to a screen.
My view of it was much better than not having anything else at all. But
Yeah,
as I said earlier, you can't beat the live experience. I'm so glad it came back.
yeah.
Oh, it was.
I that was a big relief, I think, for everyone
Yeah,
for
yeah,
many reasons.
yeah,
But some of the comedy that I saw during lockdown was really fantastic. Like I think one of the funniest things I've ever seen, Alison Thea Scott, who is fantastic already.
yeah.
She was doing a bit on, I can't remember if it was, I think it might be one something that Chaz Redhead was doing. She came on to do like an interview as a spider, and I hope to God that it's preserved somewhere. It's one of the funniest things
That sounds amazing.
I've ever seen. Yeah, she that was fantastic.
They did with the lockdown nights. They did a series of comedy shows every night of the week, and the ones that could do them well were very good.
Mm,
They needed comedians to engage with the audience, so they had front rows and everything. It was
yeah,
it was an inspired way of doing it, but there was something missing from the live performance. And as I say, when it came back, it was extraordinary when it came back.
yeah.
Who are your favourite comedians, past and present? Did you have
Past and
to growing
present.
up?
This is quite a difficult question because when I wrote my notes for this, it's fully 3 pages long.
Wow.
Because
Big five.
unusually for a comedian, I really like comedy.
Yeah,
Um, so like my list of favorite comedians is basically almost everyone that I've seen.
good
Um,
man.
so I mean, like definitely, I think from back in the day, my favorite is definitely Bill Bailey.
Oh, good man.
That's
He is amazing.
that he, yeah, really fantastic. I think was really uh, there's always kind of like lines of his kind of rattling around in my head. So definitely his material, for better or for worse, has had like a kind of a formative impact on me. Because that was like that's almost as soon as I'm able to kind of like buy my own DVDs as a child. Uh, his material is always going to be in my media diet.
Yeah,
Um, Pierre Novelli,
yeah,
definitely. Definitely in the top five. I discovered him when I took my mother to see Frank Skinner.
brilliant.
I wasn't too fast about Frank Skinner because I had obviously got it into my head like, oh, I'm going to go here to be full of old people. It's going to be Frank Skinner, who's like, for all these old people. It's like Frank Skinner was great. I think he's really fantastic.
He's very
But then,
natural, isn't he?
yeah, he's really good. I mean, but
Very brilliant.
we were in this theater, and it was just full of old people, and older people. I'm being less generous than maybe I should be, but Piano Valley was the opening act, and then there was me, and I could hear one other person in the stalls laughing. And I was like, this is even better than if it was a room full of kind of like millennials.
Yeah.
It's 100% because he's so good. Like there's his special on YouTube, The Quiet Ones, which is an absolute masterclass, and
Yeah,
then as is his recent show, Why Can't I Just Enjoy Things.
yeah. I
Uh,
saw that. It was fantastic. I thought the
there's
Edinburgh Theatre.
the kind of the two bits that I really admire. Like there's a bit in The Quiet Ones where he's talking about chickens,
Yeah,
and then there's a really superb kind of loop in Why Can't I Just Enjoy Things, where he's talking about he takes you round and kind of like a big long thought process. It's so long you kind of forget where you started, and when he brings you back, it's perfect.
I love comedians like that where they start off with the story and they work right round and they finish bang on, and it all fits in. It's so brilliant.
Mm. Uh, if I'm going to rattle through a few like very
Yeah,
quickly,
please do.
May Martin.
Yeah,
Saw so many of their shows. Almost any chance that I got. People on the circuit now that I'm always really excited to see. Now, if I start doing that, I'm just going to have to list everyone that I know. because that would be unfair. Uh, like Adam Flood, I'm always in awe of.
Yeah, it's brilliant.
Uh, Kate Checker,
Yeah.
I'm always very excited to see Kate Checker on a bill. Um, uh, Alfie Packham has
Oh,
one
it's
of
brilliant.
my favorite jokes, which I won't spoil. Um, Ahir Shah,
Yeah.
I'm in awe of. Elf Lions.
Yeah.
There's a gentleman called Brennan Lee Mulligan, who is an American improviser who's mostly known for doing D&D shows. He's great. His colleague Zach Oyama is great. Basically anyone who's ever been on Dropout TV, which is an excellent service, which I highly recommend everyone check out. It's fantastic. Anyone who was ever on the heyday of Mock the Week.
Yeah.
Yeah, I forced myself to stop there because if I go through the rest of this list, it will be I will just be here all day.
My first ever gig, aged 7, was Les Dawson in the 70s, and then I saw Tommy Cooper a year later with the family, and that was it. I was hooked, and I've seen just about everybody you can imagine, and watching comedy evolve has just been the most joyous thing. And now it's as vibrant as ever. There's some amazing talent out there.
There is definitely.
Yeah.
I mean, the thing that makes me sad is that it definitely feels like there's less of a shine on it than when I was a teenager.
Right.
Like it's less of a. It definitely feels like it's less in the zeitgeist than it was. It's not so much of a staple on TV now.
That's interesting. You say, well, I mean, the begging question is, why did they get rid of Mock the Week and they've put repeats on that are doing really well? What is the point of that?
I wouldn't want to speculate about the motivations of the BBC.
I find it bonkers. I really do. Because it's such a good show for a good grounding for them all. If you were on a bill of a number of acts, would you stay and watch them all?
I'm only very recently at the stage where I have that option.
Yeah.
The reality of the situation for me at the moment is that I am still working quite a demanding day job.
Right.
And I have no end of things that kind of like I want to do and that I feel like I have to do and that I do need to do as well. Like I've got a show on Tuesday at Vauxhall, which is kind of one of the sort of pro clubs that I've fallen in with.
Yeah.
And looking at the lineup, I'm debating with myself now. It's like, do I turn up from the start and watch all of these great people, some of whom I haven't seen, some of whom I haven't seen for a while, some of whom I just think are good. And then also got in the back of my head, like everything else I've got to do with my life, like chores. But yeah, I mean, it's if I could, then I would. I think it's what I'm trying to drive at. But it's
there may be reasons why you can't, but you're not saying I wouldn't do it out of spite. If as you say, if you could, you would.
I think there's definitely a scenario where I would do it out of spite. I've got a second list of people.
Right.
No. Yeah, I mean, like I was saying before at the start, it is still a huge kind of investment of time, and
Yeah, yeah,
I'm like a man of 35 years now. Like
yeah.
I've I've got a full-time job which allows me to do this, and I've got um, the rest of my life to take care of. I've got
Sure. Yeah.
like if I'm at if I'm at a show, I'm not doing anything else. Like at some point I've got to eat, I've got to sleep, I've got to clean the house, do the kitchen, do the garden. I've got there's my own comedy writing, comedy admin. Like
Sure.
I've got to send so many emails every month.
Yeah.
Anything else that I might like to do, because like the philosophy that I've certainly got now in the last year is just like, what is the point of doing all these things that I need to do if I can't also do the things that I want to do? Because eventually I will die. Uh, and I don't necessarily want to get to that stage and have more regrets than are necessary.
That's very true, my friend. I am a firm believer that everybody experiences routine, like you
Mm.
said, but they need an interest other than the routine to keep them going and to balance it all out. And for me, it's this comedy.
Yeah, it's definitely kind of the leading thing in mind, because this is kind of like my connection to the world.
Yeah,
Uh, and I think if I gave this up, uh, I feel like I would essentially disappear.
right.
Uh, which not in the necessarily a grim way, but like
Mm.
everything else that I do is kind of like it is in a sense in a closed box.
It's routine.
Mm.
Yeah, yeah. Um, like me, do you go to a lot of comedy gigs as a member of the audience?
I try to.
Yeah.
I'm constantly looking at kind of the venues that I like, and I'm constantly on the lookout for like previews and works in progress and stuff.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, haven't seen as many this year as I would have liked, just because like I said, I'm busy. That's the word that I was looking for that entire like 10-minute thing. Um,
Well,
just
we've
describing the
got
constant
there.
busyness. Um, I am like because I'm not that interested in clubs
Sure.
really. I'm uh, I want to see an hour. Um, like I want to see someone who's made something, and I want uh, like I think the epitome of it is oh god, I'm going to forget the name now. I don't think he's doing it at the moment, so probably it doesn't matter. Let me just quickly and subtly
Yeah.
Google uh, Nick Sampson.
I've heard of him.
He's very good.
Yeah.
Um, 1904. So, kind of like one of the probably should have mentioned this in the other question, but one of the kind of the shows that I kind of really have hold up as kind of like the epitome of uh, like kind of the zenith of comedy, and kind of like almost the kind of thing that I want to be doing, not in the same way as Nick, because Nick's like uh, uh, an actor and a writer performer who's on TV and stuff. Like he was a Power Ranger, and he was in the New Zealand crime drama Broken with Mysteries, and like he's really he's a writer and actor on Rose Matafeo's Starstruck. But he did a show which was a single concert kind of encapsulated in an hour, which is basically the story of the 1904 Olympic Marathon. And he built an entire complete artifact around this singular kind of core.
Mm-hmm.
And that's like kind of really what I'm interested in. I definitely don't subscribe to the notion that uh, a comedy show has to be about anything, or it has to have a message or an agenda, or it has
Sure.
to have a sad bit at the end. But like ultimately, I think like an hour is the most pure form of comedy. Is it something that you've made and you've got enough runway to really give that life. Like a club set is fantastic. But like you're doing 10, 20 minutes where in a sense, the objective is to get through that 10, 20 minutes. With an hour show, the objective is, I've made something. If that makes sense.
Yeah, very much so. Yeah. I've much enjoyed chatting to you and talking to you. It's been wonderful. Thank you so
Thank you for having
much.
me.
A great guest. Is there anything else you'd like to say before we go? Where people can find you on social media? Do you have a podcast or anything like that?
I don't have a podcast. I am on social media.
Yeah.
I'm on Instagram at Will T Davies.
Yeah.
And by extension, I guess Fred's.
Yes, the new thing.
If Twitter still exists when this comes out, my account is WT Davies.
Yeah.
If I'm still using that in 6 to 8 months. But yeah, I mean, I'm around in London. I encourage people to come and see a show.
Yeah.
I sometimes post about them on social media when I remember.
Well, I'm looking forward very much to seeing you again soon. And thank you so much for your time. It's been great.
No worries. Thanks for having me.
Thanks a lot now. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.